Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays, hosted by someone's favorite film buff, Nathan. I love movies and I want to share that with you. From old originals to cult classics and foreign favorites, along with straight up drivel, WWW is your place for all things movies. Stick around and we'll leave you with a movie to watch over the weekend with your family or that special someone. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome to What to Watch Wednesdays. My name is Nathan, the host of the show. I really hope that you all are doing great during finals week. I know I am. I'm doing good enough to be running the show during finals week. Although this will be the final week of What to Watch Wednesdays for the year of 2024, more specifically. It's not going to be ending the show permanently. No, far from it. We will be coming back in winter of 2025, but 2024 has been a big year for the show, and so it's just kind of a fun little way to close out the year as a whole. Just the year itself, not the school year, not permanently, but we will be doing a nice little send-off before we go into winter break. Because tonight is going to be themed around holidays. I figured since we did the entire month of October talking about horror movies in preparation for Halloween, it only made sense to do a show about Christmas movies during December, right before we go to winter break. Because by the time we get back, and by the time this show starts up again, it'll be well into the new year of 2025, so might as well do it now while we still can. And that leads nicely into what our watch list is going to be tonight, because we are going to be talking about National Lampoon Christmas Vacation from 1981, Elf from 2003, and It's a Wonderful Life from 1946. I will say that because this is finals week and because this is the last episode of the quarter and of the full calendar year of 2024, I'm not exactly going to bust my butt going fully in depth, especially since there won't be an episode of What to Watch Weekends this week. So I'm going to kind of take it a bit easy with the reviews. I'll still definitely be reviewing them. It's just not going to be the hard-hitting, cutting-edge journalistic approach that I take to reviewing movies, which I don't take anyways. It's not going to be a big change. What I'm really just trying to get across to you is that reviewing Christmas movies is a lot like reviewing a musical and then being an idiot and complaining about there being music in it. You're not going to hear me start complaining about there being Christmas cheer in a Christmas movie. I can forgive cheesiness. I can forgive it being a little corny. And if anything, I kind of need it during finals week. I'm sure we all do. So we can just kind of sit back, relax, and enjoy the show tonight. Because let me tell you, I can forgive corniness and cheesiness when a movie knows how to balance it out. And that's a really good setup for our first movie on the watch list tonight, which will be National Lampoon Christmas Vacation. So stick around after the break, where we jump into that. 88.1 The Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our first movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at National Lampoon Christmas Vacation from 1989, available to watch now on Max. To basically round out the rest of this review so that I don't have to say the title over and over again, keep in mind that I will now be calling this movie Christmas Vacation, instead of National Lampoon Christmas Vacation, over and over again. So, the plot summary of Christmas Vacation, for those of you who are unaware, is about Clark Griswold, who is dedicated to having the perfect Christmas with his family. Rather unfortunately for Clark Griswold, his entire family seems against that idea, including his in-laws, his wife, his children, and his own parents, and even his crazy cousin Eddie, who shows up out of nowhere. Which kind of results in it feeling like the entire world is against Clark Griswold having the perfect Christmas. Which might seem rather unfortunate, and it is rather unfortunate, until you realize that this is a comedy movie. And something famous quote about unfortunacy being the mother of comedy. That was a really bad saying. I'm going to turn it around here. Here's one thing that you have to keep in mind about Christmas Vacation. Part of the charm comes from the fact that it has Chevy Chase playing Clark Sparky Griswold. Yes, his nickname is Sparky. Half of the funny factor, if you could do some good alliteration there. Funny factor of Christmas Vacation comes from Clark being played by Chevy Chase, who ends up doing a bang-up job because He's just a really good optimist or fake optimist who also has that hidden crazy under him. Eventually during the movie, you do get to see his crazy side come out in full force, and it is downright hilarious. But leading up to that point, he's a really good fall guy for a lot of problems just seeming to happen to him or happen around him or just kind of affect him in some way, shape, or form. That makes it really entertaining to watch. With comedy movies, you need to have there be conflict still because it is a story. It just needs to be different from like there needs to be a fight scene or like a almost like a relationship drama. It doesn't necessarily need to be that. It just needs to be conflict of some sort. It can be wacky, it can be over the top because it's a comedy movie. But when it's wacky and over the top, you need to balance that out with either real life elements in some way, possibly, depending on what you're going for, or you need to have a good escalation if you start off with real life elements. That's the thing that we should focus on with Christmas Vacation, because part of the charm as well is that you can tell that the people making it are good writers. You'd hope that there'd be good writers who make comedy movies. But that's not always the case. Comedy can be seen as sometimes the genre where you just kind of throw away stuff. You don't exactly spend a lot of effort in making a good story that has a meaning or a message to it, or at least try to make it entertaining as possible. You're just kind of throwing stuff out into the void, or you do think it's funny and it's not funny at all. Christmas Vacation, thankfully, goes into the category of movies that are legitimately funny for all the right reasons and all the intended reasons. Part of that comes from the fact that Christmas Vacation does a really good job at balancing out its sort of progression throughout its storyline, or its just overall progression of a quote-unquote plot in any way, which is it tends to... Basically, it front loads itself with all of the mundane stuff, which when I say mundane, keep in mind I'm talking about the family driving underneath a semi-truck. And then it ends up filling out the back end with all of the crazy stuff, which is at the full maximum height of it, it involves the family getting invaded by the SWAT team. Which sounds crazy on paper and is even crazier in execution. But keep in mind that the SWAT team stuff happens near the end of the movie. And the stuff about them getting trapped under a semi-truck while driving is, although very wacky and out there, not exactly the most, I guess, unhinged or unrealistic thing to happen in Christmas Vacation. The SWAT team is the most unrealistic thing, and they save it for the end. Do you see the point I'm trying to get at here? It does a good job balancing itself out. It doesn't show its hand automatically right off the bat. It keeps it for later to really blow your mind so that each time it escalates, it feels like something new, and it feels like it's showing something fresh each time it does an escalation. It's very well paced out, very well stacked. It's exactly like how a pyramid should be structured, you know? And when I say a pyramid, just think of a pyramid of blocks, specifically rectangular blocks. You don't exactly want to put the top one, you don't want to have the top one be the biggest, craziest thing possible. And you don't want to have the bottom block be the smallest one out there. And that's a great way to look at any comedy movie. If you see it stacked out like that and imagine it, you want your middle thing to still be definitely very wide, but not the widest piece in there. I'm talking about this both in terms of the pyramid analogy and trying to explain it with a comedy movie at the same time rather than explaining the first thing first and the second thing second. Oopsie daisy. Just keep in mind, the best, most unhinged, craziest jokes in Christmas Vacation happen near the end of the movie when Clark goes crazy. The more normal stuff, or the stuff that feels mundane and realistic and set in reality, happens closer to the beginning and around the middle section. So it does a really good job. What I will say with Christmas Vacation, one of my only real critiques of the movie in terms of it being enjoyable is that when his cousin Eddie shows up, it does do another thing that a good comedy movie can do, which is it rides the line of becoming too much or unbearable or falling off the edge into simply cringe-inducing comedy rather than actual screwball, slapstick, funny jokes, well-executed punchline comedy. It rides that line so well that it never feels to fall off the deep end into that. But it definitely risks it when Eddie shows up. But it doesn't, it's not like I dislike the character of Eddie. If you're reading this as disliking Eddie, you are far from what I'm actually trying to say here. I'm just saying that there's always a potential for a specific character in any comedy movie to throw it off balance. And when it's a movie like Christmas Vacation, which is about family dramas and family interpersonal stuff, there's always going to be that one annoying family member. Eddie is the annoying family member to everyone. He's the bane of a lot of people's existence within the movie, specifically Clark Griswold. So with that, there's always the risk of annoying your audience as well. Thankfully, Eddie does not fall into that category, and it just kind of teeters there. It's a very good balancing act, and it's again about making sure you have good writers that know how to balance that sort of thing out and give him the right material to work with, and having a good actor to play him in the first place. And honestly, while I was also talking about the main strength of it being keeping all of the normal stuff at the beginning, if you were to remove all of the jokes from Christmas Vacation, it would just be a good family drama set in reality about Christmas time. With all of the jokes, it just kind of turns into a normal family drama set in not reality where everything is crazy and bananas. So I really appreciate that effort right there. And our final way to close out the review on Christmas Vacation is something that I will definitely repeat while I am back at home during Christmas. I don't know what else to say, except it's Christmas and we're all in misery. If that doesn't sum up the perfect feeling of Christmas or holidays with your family, I don't know what does. And I can tell you right now that one thing I know for sure, although I may not know what sums up Christmas perfectly, I do know what does a very good job of striking that balance between annoying and still really funny. And that will be the next movie on our watch list tonight, which will be Elf. So stick around for that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our second movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at Elf from 2003, available to watch now on Max. So for the basic plot summary of Elf, we follow Buddy the elf, who is not in fact an elf and is instead a human who is raised in the North Pole as an elf his entire life. And after realizing the kind of obvious fact that he is a human and not an elf, he ends up going to New York to find his biological father. Now, you may be asking, if you've never seen this movie before, you may be asking, what am I talking about? What are you talking about? What is this? This sounds crazy. Is this real? Yes, it is real. Let me explain it to you with two or a few simple words as to why this movie is the way it is. Will Ferrell plays Buddy. If that does not explain anything at all, I feel very bad for you because you probably do not understand what I'm going to say for the rest of this review. For those of you who know who Will Ferrell is, you know exactly why that explains everything about Elf. I'm just going to say that right now. Will Ferrell is just he's got a reputation for being extremely goofy, half childish, half just unhinged in every way, shape, and form, knowing exactly how to be the funniest guy in the room without ever feeling like he's trying too hard to do it. So for him to be a person who was raised as an elf, when I say an elf, I don't mean a mystical fantasy elf. I mean an elf in Santa's workshop, a cheery little creature who makes toys for children all year round before Christmas Eve, because this is the movie realm, we can do whatever we want. When we have something like that, and we have him being a human being raised as an elf from the time he was a baby to now, and now he has to go to the big city. On the one hand, we've got that stupid trope of it being person goes to city being unfamiliar with city. On the other hand, it's Will Ferrell, and it's such an interesting concept that I do not care that it's a trope, because it's Will Ferrell. Half of the reason that I like this movie is because it has Will Ferrell in it. I can't think of a version of this movie that did not have Will Ferrell playing the elf. half of this movie's iconography just comes from the fact that it's Will Ferrell. So many good reasons. But I will try to move away from saying that over and over again and tell you right now that in comparison to the last movie on the watch list, that being Christmas Vacation, wow. Sometimes, in my opinion, Elf it kind of almost teeters and nearly falls over into that category of being cringe-inducing comedy, which is definitely a valid form of comedy, but is not exactly my pick as my personal favorite form of comedy. But keep in mind, I've said that it nearly falls over. I haven't said that it falls into that category. I'm just saying it teeters and walks that line oh so very close before it tends to swing all the way back over and go back into being legitimately funny, in my opinion at least. I think there were a lot of close calls where they could have very well just fallen into that early 2000s trend of it being cringe-inducing for the sake of cringe-inducing, just to get a quick laugh out of you. And when I say cringe-inducing, I don't mean in terms of it being offensive or being crass. I just mean in terms of it being awkward. And Elf, again, is so close to being that. Thankfully, it never feels too much. It never feels like it's too much. And when it does, it backs off almost immediately and proves that the people writing this movie knew exactly what they were doing. They knew how to handle themselves. They knew how to handle their story. They knew how to handle the character of Buddy the Elf. So for that reason, I do understand the hype surrounding Elf to the max. I will also say that part of my criticism could be boiled down to I think that the whole go to the big city for the first time is a very stupid trope that's been done way too many times, especially in the early 2000s when this movie came out. It was definitely not a new thing that Elf came up with, but for being a movie about that, they certainly tried their hardest to make it seem original. They have this unique they tried so very hard with him being in the North Pole and being surrounded by stop motion characters and other elves and the whole perspective trip, whatever. They have like elves, they have Santa Claus, they have the whole magic element. It's definitely not like, let's say, zoo animals going to the big city. It's got something to it. It's trying to play off of established tropes and then build upon an established trope as well. For that reason, it builds off of multiple tropes to eventually work its way out into being something original. And for that reason, it tends to work about 3/4 of the time at being something new and original and unique. For that reason, I give Elf all of the props it's due. I will say, as much as I love Will Ferrell, as I've already made it quite clear, I will say that Elf definitely wouldn't have worked with just I almost said Jim Carrey. Wow. With just Will Ferrell being in it. I like Jim Carrey too, but Will Ferrell, I think I like him more. The point is, it wouldn't have worked with just Will Ferrell being in this movie. The other half of the reason this movie works so well is honestly the supporting cast. Weirdly enough, I think this is one of the few times I have actively pointed out that the supporting cast is what makes the movie good. It's what makes it funny. You need to have good supporting characters to interact with our main crazy character, who is definitely just has the mind of a child. Buddy is just a child in an adult's body, and it's really funny for that reason, but it's even funnier to see him interact with the other adults around him. And boy, are all of them great. We have Bob Newhart playing his adoptive elf father. Rest in peace, he passed away earlier this year. We have James Caan, the wonderful, legendary actor James Caan himself, who apparently did not want to be on the movie, but I'm so glad he is. He works so well. Being Buddy's biological father. It's so perfectly funny. He cracked me up at least once during this movie, and it was in a very big way. We have Zoe Deschanel. I'm sorry if I butchered that name. We have her being the love interest, who's not just some one-dimensional person. She actually has a personality. She has something to get over herself. She has something to conquer. She has an arc in of herself. We have Edward Asner, I believe. Oh, Edward Asner playing Santa Claus, who is probably the best version of Santa I have ever seen in movies, as with him being the secondary character. So many of these people are part of the reason that Elf works as well as it does. Without these casting choices, I don't think this movie would have been nearly as good. Again, it would have gained some merit because it has Will Ferrell, but these people made this movie work. I found myself relying on them when Will Ferrell wasn't in a scene, when Buddy was not on screen. They managed to carry things on their own. And it contributes to a movie that it can be so much. It can be a lot. It can be a lot to take in, especially for an early 2000s movie. It can seem overly cartoony, overly saturated in a strange way, both in color and in terms of storyline. But it never once felt like it was too much. It never once felt like it crossed that line. And as a consistent theme, the next movie that we will be talking about, It's a Wonderful Life, did not cross a line when it very well could have. So stick around after the break where we jump into that. 88 won the Burg, your movie central. Welcome back to What to Watch Wednesdays. And for our third and final movie on the watch list tonight, we will be taking a look at It's a Wonderful Life from 1946, available to watch now on Amazon Prime. For the basic plot summary of It's a Wonderful Life, we follow a heavenly angel, right, as in like real heaven, or up in space in the case of this movie. We follow an angel by the name of Clarence, who is told by God that if he goes down to Earth and saves a specific man right at this moment, on this specific day, he will in fact earn his wings as an angel. And so Clarence goes down to Earth in order to save this man by the name of George Bailey, the owner of the local Bedford Falls Building and Loan Company. And he is about to jump off of a bridge on Christmas Eve. So that was a factual statement, but you may be asking where the Christmas cheer comes in. And I'll tell you right now, it may not sound like there's any whatsoever with a general basis overview like that. Okay, it's very dark. Yes, as I hinted to, there's a chance of this movie going too far. Don't worry, it doesn't. I'll back it up. We'll rewind, take a breath. Don't worry, it's not that bad. Let's go over this. The movie of It's a Wonderful Life is played out masterfully in the way that it tells its story. Because before the angel Clarence goes down to Earth to save George Bailey, he is told by God or by his boss or by the person above him that he should know some things about George Bailey before he goes down and saves him. Fair enough. So they end up having a conversation where it's basically a very long flashback of George Bailey's life, from him being about, let's say, 8 to 10 years old to his current day time on Christmas Eve during this time, right? About 1946, I would assume that the movie's set in present day unless otherwise specified. So the first hour and 40 minutes of this movie is just a very long extended flashback. And you may be asking, is that an interesting story? Well, yes, it is. It's a very interesting story because we are basically given a character study on George Bailey. We are told exactly what kind of person he is. He's a kind individual who wants to do the right thing, but if need be, and he is actually, when needed be, quite often, he has a very short temper and things just don't seem to go his way as often as he wants them to. He seems to want to travel the world and do all sorts of crazy things, but through unfortunate circumstances is ending up having to stay in his little hometown for most of his life as an adult. And while he doesn't want to, he just stays there in order to prevent certain things from happening within his community. One specific thing would be preventing Henry Potter, the old curmudgeonly businessman, from buying the building and loan company. Right? So we're basically given conflict, we're given setup, we're given development, we're given a story. For the first hour and 40 minutes of It's a Wonderful Life, we're given the life story of George Bailey. And it plays out in a typical dramatic fashion, you know, a drama, comedy, kind of dramedy, sort of not really a documentary, more of just a based on a true story type movie, right? And it's not based on a true story. It's more so just that's the atmosphere that it provides. Okay? Then, at the hour and 40-minute mark, when we cut to George Bailey being on the bridge and about to jump off to his demise, we then see a man fall in, and we see George Bailey jump in after him. And we find out that George Bailey ends up saving this man. This man turns out to be Clarence the Angel, who we meet at the beginning of the movie, right? And so the rest of the movie is basically George talking to Clarence and saying, I don't believe that you're an angel. Also, I am just so down on my luck. I don't know what to do. I need some help. I need money to make ends meet still. And I kind of wish I was never born at this stage in my life. And Clarence goes, well, your wish is granted. Let's do this Charles Dickens A Christmas Carol style and show you what the world would be like. Your specific town of Bedford Falls, what it would be like if you had never been born. And for the next 30 minutes until the ending of the movie, we basically follow George Bailey as he is trapped in an episode of The Twilight Zone. That's the perfect way of describing it, if I'm being completely honest with you. It's just an episode of The Twilight Zone. Very high concept, supernatural-esque feeling to it that's based off of something with a lot of potential, but leaves you wanting more. Like more expansion, more to the story, but in a way that doesn't leave you unsatisfied, just more like, I wish there was more to this, but I understand why they didn't do more because it's just an individual episode. Again, that may work out as a criticism in some cases, some scenarios. Because, again, this is a movie. This is not a TV show. This is a full-length movie. But in It's a Wonderful Life's case, it works out completely fine. It's basically like watching an episode of The Twilight Zone with an hour and 40 minutes of backstory beforehand. And for that reason, I think it's one of the most interesting Christmas movies you could possibly watch. I think there is just so many good things about It's a Wonderful Life that saying it's a wonderful movie feels so cliche and stupid, but incredibly accurate at the same time, so I won't prevent myself from saying it. It is quite a wonderful movie. Part of that comes down to just it being well told and me really liking the character of Clarence the Angel, especially when he actually shows up in the movie. Part of it is from how it manages to actually balance out such an interesting and very complex story idea for a movie, especially in the 1940s, with like even the most primitive effects to get across the supernatural like storytelling side of it. It works wonders. And it also just has good plot threads that you feel like that backstory segment is actually important to what happens later in the movie. So it's not like a complete waste of time. It's far from a complete waste of time. You need to know what George Bailey is about before you see him attempt to jump off a bridge, or more so contemplate jumping off a bridge. And because of that, it also makes you feels things. Feels things, yes. It makes you feel things in your heart and in your soul if you have one. It does a really good job of hitting you right in the feels. I can tell you right now that I very nearly cried near the ending of It's a Wonderful Life. It's such a beautifully wonderful movie. But with all of that being said, I think part of the reason it works, and I'm going to be fully honest here, I know my dad does not like this actor, but George Bailey is played by the well-known Jimmy Stewart. If it was not Jimmy Stewart, I do not think this movie would have been as good. I cannot see anyone even from the 40s being as good as Jimmy Stewart was. He plays the perfect fall guy, the perfect guy with a short temper and someone who doesn't have anything go right for him, and kind of a clueless guy who ends up back on his feet at the end anyways. A really good casting choice, a really good story, a really good message, a really good idea behind it. So many reasons for me to recommend watching It's a Wonderful Life if you've never seen it before. If you don't like old movies, I do not care, quite frankly. I would honestly recommend this movie to anybody over the holidays. And with that, I will send you off to your holidays. Because, again, this is the last episode of What to Watch Wednesdays for the quarter and for the year of 2024. What to Watch Wednesdays will be back, I believe, January 8th. Don't hold me to that. The first Wednesday of the quarter in winter of 2025 here on 88.1 The Burg, 8 to 9 p.m. on Wednesday night, as it always is, but it will be in winter of 2025. Thank you all so much for the wonderful support over the year of 2024 for What to Watch Wednesdays. This has been the best year for the show yet, and I hope that 2025 will be an even better year somehow. So fingers crossed, knock on wood. Something else related to luck. I'm not going to come up with another one. And before we go, please make sure to follow What to Watch Wednesdays on on Instagram at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces. Be sure to check in on the YouTube channel at What to Watch Wednesdays, all one word, no caps, no spaces. There will be episodes coming out over the break while I will not be running the show live. And with that, I will be back in 2025. I hope you all have a restful break, and I hope finals go well for you if you're still in them. And again, thank you to the Burg. Thank you to everybody for your support. And I'll be back here in 2025 telling you what to watch. Good night, everybody.